Like I found it, the world's only newly resurfaced road, or at least Britain's most newly resurfaced road. Well, wonders never cease. Even seems to have addressed the really bad camber they had on this side of the road here. Oh well, they've got to justify their 10% council tax increase somehow. Yeah, so the weather's picked up a little bit. It's been a little bit up and down over the Easter. Quite a couple of days of let me start again. Yeah, so the weather's improved at long last. It's been pretty rainy over much of the Easter weekend. It wasn't too bad yesterday, I think. A little bit wet, but not too bad. And today's a lot better. So just going to take a bit of a spin up North Anglesey, I think, today. May or may not stop at Paris Mountain for a quick walk there. We'll press ahead, go along the north coast and then come back along the A55 probably. Yeah, just give a bike a bit of a quick clean before we came out. It's quite amazing how quickly a new bike picks up scratches and scuffs and things, but hey, that's just an obsessive's concern. It's there to be used. Yeah, so the weather's looking quite nice up north. It's a bit of a northerly wind, so the weather's coming from that direction ahead of us. Really do with going round a roundabout the wrong way for about half an hour to even out these tyres. They're really getting quite stepped now, particularly noticeable in a right hand turn. It's a little bit windy, but for Anglesey it's a calm day. And the part we're going through now, Coedana, is an area where several small landed estates tried to establish themselves really in towards the sort of middle or late 19th century. They missed the boat, of course. Slavery had moved on by then. They were effectively building estates on the back of what remained of the proceeds from the slave trade. Burnt through all that money, and then that was it. They couldn't develop any further. So one of them's a hotel and has long been so. Another one's been done up finally after a long period of lying derelict. Some of the land along here is owned by sort of post-Norman conquest landowners. Those who supported the king at the time were given large tracts of land, and Anglesey is fairly well known for having three major landowners. So we're still living with the Norman conquest. Well, the further north we go up here, the windier it gets. We used to live up on Paris Mountain, 300 feet up in the sky, and yeah, it was almost always windy up there. Not a very pleasant place in the winter, during the storms at least. But a nice place to watch the sky drifting by. But as well as being divided by three major landowners traditionally, Anglesey's kind of divided in half, in that from sort of Llangefni, the administrative town, northwards, Anglesey's seen even locally as a bit of a terra incognita really. It is mostly agricultural land from Llangefni northwards. And south of Llangefni there's quite a lot of, it's the Menai hub as it's known. You get lots of dormitory villages, people working in Bangor and mainly in the public sector, hospital and university schools, that kind of thing, councils. So the north is substantially less developed, I think you might say. Whether anybody wants that development or not is another matter, but they had quite feisty arguments about the expansion of solar farms in the area we're kind of passing through now. There's one big one that was almost entirely destroyed during a storm Dara, and there are plans to build an even bigger one, pretty much on the land that you can just see here, just beyond this little village here, out towards the pylons. So there's got a lot of resistance. Individual landowners, if they're amenable to the offers by these big companies, of course they'll take up the offer, make their money either to vacate the farm or to take it as rental income. Usually keep farming sheep underneath the panel anyway. But in terms of food production and what have you, not such a good idea. I will say, I'm sure solar panels are a temporary measure in any case. You know, they're not terribly efficient. They work, they contribute, there's a surprising amount to the national grid, but wind turbines and solar panels, I'm pretty sure, are technologies that are going to be superseded in the coming decades, and they'll no doubt quietly vanish from the landscape, especially if they get cracking on fusion. Lots and lots of people working on that, of course, because they've got the incentive now with the Russian energy crisis that we went through a couple of years ago and are still sort of living with the consequence of. So yes, even though it seems like the back of nowhere, plenty of live politics and debates and arguments going on. So here we go, going through Paris Mountain. I won't be stopping today, I don't think. Particularly feel like going for a walk, especially with that number of people about. I was going to say they're going to be going home tonight on a Monday, Easter Monday, but in fact they'll probably be staying for the week, won't they? It looks nice out over the sea. I used to really enjoy looking out over the sea when we used to live up here. Sort of made you part of the wider British Isles, as it were, not politically but geographically. We frequently see the Isle of Man, the Mourne Mountains in Northern Ireland, of course, which is about 180 kilometres away. Can you believe? You can still see them. You can see Shreve Donard and a couple of accompanying mountains. You can see Cumbria when it's particularly clear, usually when they're backlit, in fact, which are quite rare. So you get the idea that Anglesey's kind of in the middle of the Irish Sea, as it were. Amlwch is a quiet little town, just coming into it now. Traditionally a sort of seafaring town. The copper used to go out. A little bit of fishing that still goes on there, but very little. Tourist boats and fishing boats, of course, the tourist fishing, that is the recreational fishing. And the occasional support vessel for wind turbine and all that kind of thing. So it's a nice little town. It's got a fair mix of local and incomers came in very large numbers sort of in the post-war era. Used to get a lot of evacuees, of course, who stayed on, had families and so on. So we've got the fairly unusual situation where we have a Catholic church in Amlwch in the form of, well, many people call an upturned boat. I don't think it was ever intended to be like an upturned boat. It was just a particular architectural design peculiar to the, I can't remember now, I think the 1960s. I've seen one that's exactly the same, believe it or not, in Lima in Peru. It's the only one I've seen that matches the one we've got, Our Lady Star of the Sea, as we have it in Amlwch. I'll just keep going past that in a few seconds. Busy, not a lot going on, pretty sleepy town, doesn't really get a lot of tourism. And there it is, been fairly recently renovated. Had a leaky roof because the concrete ribs were too thin at the top of the design floor, really. Calatrava, I think, was the architect, if I remember rightly. Let's just pull it here if I can. I'm sure they won't mind, will they? I'm sure they won't. Take some drone footage of it, perhaps. There we are, that was Our Lady Star of the Sea. Interesting architectural detour for us. Just make our way out of Amlwch now and start our run along the north coast. There we go, the tyres behaving themselves quite nicely on there, look. Yeah, it's very nice blue landscape today, or blue seascape even. Very sort of Cornish nature to it. It's all to do with the west facing coast, of course. Can't quite see the Isle of Man today. You can see the cloud on the horizon marks where the Isle of Man is. About 42 odd miles away from Anglesey. There used to be a big oil tanker mooring point off there up until, I don't know, about the 1990s at some point, early 1990s. They had an Octel plant that extracted bromine from the sea here, and just offshore there was an oil terminal that took oil off the ships and pumped it all the way to Stanlow. Hotel over there that sticks up just above the horizon there. It's been done up into gentrified apartments now, of course, as is the way for everything around Anglesey, unfortunately. Very convenient and quiet way to get rid of the poor population and replace them with wealthy, mostly retirees or second homeowners. The council claims to be rabidly Welsh, but in fact gives planning approval for things that are just destroying the culture and the language of the area, unfortunately. It's all part of the big playbook of Whitehall, of course. Break down differences, make it all part of the empire. And that plan has probably been more successful in the past 10 years than it has ever been. The economic disparity between here and Middle England, as it were, absolutely vast. Sorry state of affairs. There's no hope for the young here anymore. They all have to leave. We've brought up our kids to know that. There are no prizes for being poor and sticking your ground, but ideally, of course, they would want to stay here, but it's just simply not viable. And that fact that there are no career opportunities here as well, so one goes with the other. So yeah, this road we're going along, and this series of bends here, particularly notorious for accidents, cars and motorcycles alike, speeding the usual factor, of course. But it's perfectly enjoyable at 60 miles an hour. There's no need to hare around here at all. There really isn't. You're out in the middle of nowhere. The roads are pretty empty. Just enjoy it for what it is. This is a good road for motorcycling, it has to be said. Big solar farm just out on the left there, you can't really see it from this angle. Plenty of walkers, there's an old China clay brickworks just down the road there. The place to pull up by the gate over there will be completely jam-packed, so they will come this far to get access. Nice place, but again it's been kind of vandalised in recent years by over-tourism. That's the story of contemporary North Wales. Over-tourism, destroying everything. Everybody's welcome, but not if you're coming here to trash it. there is the now defunct Wilver nuclear power station, operational only from the 60s, late 60s I think. Oh dear, burning plastic. Until the early 2000s I think. No, make that the early 2010s. Yeah. So it didn't last very long. And it'll be there for about 100 years now before they completely dismantle it. There have been attempts to put a new power station there, new nuclear one, big one. There was a lot of work going on to prepare the ground, but that's all packed up. I think it was Hitachi, they gave up. We had the rather astonishing phenomenon of the former Japanese Prime Minister at the time of Fukushima disaster, who came here to campaign against building a new nuclear station here. I was lucky enough to go and shake his hand, go and listen to him talk about the consequences in Japan. But there's still talk of these modular, smaller nuclear reactors. They sort of try and portray those as being a sort of friendly, furrier alternative to big power stations, but we'll see. The desperation for energy at the moment is such that Starmer and his merry lot, Miliband and the rest of them, I suspect they'll do anything. It is a difficult thing to manage, of course, energy security, but really, nobody wants a nuclear power station. A power station is one thing, it's the waste. There is no answer to that, and so it's all very well to say it's safe and brings money into the area, but waste that has to be looked after for tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of years, that's not a legacy that we've got the moral right to pass on to future generations. And there is within Wales. I don't think there is in England at the moment, but there certainly is in Wales and has been for some time, a Well-Being of Future Generations Act, which requires all future planning and the rest of it to take into account the effect on future generations. I'm not quite sure how that cuts it with nuclear power. I think you have to conclude that you can't morally permit new nuclear. There we are, like everything else, there's always some exemption or override, isn't there? So that was Chemise Bay that we just passed through there, or the outskirts of it. And unfortunately we can't fly the drone here because there's still a restriction zone. I'm not quite sure why. I'm pretty sure they've finished defueling the power station. When that happened at Trausfynydd, which is in the Rory Mountains, they lifted the flight ban, which is only up to 2,100 feet here, but we could fly over it, but of course we can't fly a drone at 2,100 feet. But you can fly a normal aircraft. But, yeah. So we'll continue along the north coast. I need to be a little less stiff. I've become a bit stiff after the tyres are beginning to give a slight slip. I need to just let go of it now. Being stiff does not help the proceedings. Pretty reasonably priced petrol for the only petrol station along the north coast there, apart from Amlwch. That's the only one. The family of the farm that owned that wind turbine, which you may have noticed there, it's Ardegog Ichab, I think it is. Richard and his family live there. They became quite a vocal protest family against the nuclear power station, because they wanted to take some of their land and they weren't willing to simply roll over and give it to them. So I know they felt at the time that they were being bullied by the company that was trying to develop it. They stood firm, and about 10 years later they've still got their land, and the power station problem's gone away for the time being. I'm sure it'll come back, but had they rolled over they would have just lost their land. So there we are. The Japanese Prime Minister went off in Richard's Land Rover to visit his family, who just had a new baby at the time. Visited the family. That was yeah, it's quite surreal really that the Japanese Prime Minister should come to his home here in the middle of nowhere place relative to Japan. So as you can see, plenty of opportunity for accidents along this road if you're not careful, or if the opposing traffic isn't careful. House for sale there, flat roof thing, a strange 1960s construction. Nice place really, but drop the gear for this corner here. Not going very quickly behind this car anyway, so I would have preferred to go a little bit quicker. There we go. Standing stone just on the side of the road here. Prehistoric, we think, although it can be very difficult of course, because farmers can put stones standing upright in fields at any old time and still do. That's I think a bona fide prehistoric one. Obviously in a prominent place, marking territory quite often. Alright, so the car ahead's got a bit of a move on at last. Heading a bit south now. Finish the North Coast Run. We got about 5 miles to Valley, more or less. Again, that part's within a no-fly zone because of Aria Valley. Not open today, but you can't go into an ATZ. Even if the place is closed, so we shan't. always carries much more than you think, this corner. Busy ploughing, getting ready for new growing season. Right, well this car didn't really make the experience very enjoyable, but there we are. It's okay. Maybe we'll get past him in a minute. Get out this 40. Fairly busy on the roads today, of course. No, not quite. Well, we could get past, but, you know, we don't want to be an idiot, do we? There we are, that's what the power's for. All without exceeding 60. And if you're looking at my clock saying it's 63, mate, yeah. There's a +3 error on the clock. So this is more like it, isn't it, really? So we're just about a mile out of Valley now. Need to get a birthday present for my wife, but I'm not sure if the shops are open. They probably aren't, so I shall do that tomorrow. Could go to Holyhead now, I suppose. Have a look what's out on the coast. Might be some interesting things. Let's go and do that, why don't we? It's only a couple of miles down the road. Haven't been out that long. There we go. Already. Bit of a funny junction, this, you've got to be careful. The road is really short. Who should be doing what? So this is Valley, a little village. Bungalows are strung around the perimeter of it. Rather strange housing like that, with tin roofs, which is great. Nothing against tin roofs, it's just that the planning authority's been so rabid about anything other than slate. Fine to dig big holes to get some slate out of the ground to put roofs up, but can't put tin roofs up apparently. But anyway, maybe that seems to be slackening now, which is good. So we need a bit of diversity. Nobody knows why Valley's called Valley. There's a sort of theory that it could be Valley from the Irish, being that it's just across the sea from Ireland, and there would have been lots of Irish workers here, and the railway, and the Telford embankment, which is coming up here now, which links Anglesey with Cubby, or Holy Island as it is in English, because Holyhead, Anglesey's largest town, actually sits on a separate island, not really aware of that as such, but it is. If you're an amateur radio enthusiast, Holyhead Island is a different entity to Anglesey. Yeah, so the sea swills in and out underneath this embankment, well, underneath through a little tunnel, which you can ride with a canoe. It's a spectacular standing wave when the water's at full flow. Busy Penrhos Nature Reserve. There's been plans to build housing here. It was supposed to be for the nuclear power, to house the nuclear power station, construction workers and all the rest of it, so it would have turned into a bit of a Wild West place. Been a lot of opposition, quite effective opposition I think from Holyhead residents and from further afield. I can't say I support building on there at all. It's just not necessary. There's plenty of other land, brownfield land, that they could build on. Yeah, lots of buttercups out. A great sense of being well into spring today. Somebody out for a run with a stroller. The landscape on the left coming up here now is missing its aluminium smelter chimney, which was brought down this time last year, I think it was now. Time goes so quickly. Yes, it was a year ago. Well, we've got one ferry in at least, so maybe get some drone footage of that possibly. Holyhead, which is really an interesting story. It's a typical port town. It has its own fair share of poverty, unfortunately. We might have to take a detour, not sure. Road ahead closed, so we're just going to take a left here. Yeah, there's lots of poverty, but it's had a bit of... There we go. We've got the kids across, so it's safe at least. Yeah, that's on the outskirts. It's sort of got these supermarkets and hardware stores and stuff, so that's sort of bringing in a fair bit of money for them. But not for the town itself. The town sadly died on its feet. But it's just that, that high street phenomenon. People just don't go to the high street now. If you're coming here on the ferries, of course, the only thing on your mind is getting as far away from the port that you just arrived at as quickly as you possibly can. It's only natural. That happens everywhere. But the people are very friendly. It's actually rather a pleasant place in many ways. You know, it enjoys early clearing of bad weather. Very nice. I always find a nice blue skies here. So if you come into Holyhead, have a trip down into the main streets, maybe stop at a cafe. There's not an awful lot else you can support there, to be perfectly honest. A few second-hand shops and stuff, if you're into that kind of thing, which my family is occasionally. Some clothes and stuff. But the light when the sun's out is really something quite special in Holyhead. I could go up to South Stack today with a bit of scenery, but to be perfectly honest, it's going to be jam-packed with tourists. Trains, Transport for Wales, Class 82, with a hospice advert on it. It's novel, I haven't seen that before. Not that I'm a train spotter, you understand, but that Mr. Francis Bourgeois is something to answer for. Trains are kind of interesting. I sort of grew up with trains. There was an old cargo route where it used to be at the Anglesey Central Railway branch line. It continued to be used until the 1990s with the old Deltics. We used to have to jump out of their way occasionally. They only travelled at about 10 miles an hour or something, so it wasn't like trespassing on a railway as such, but yeah, we used to put the occasional tuppence down on the rail to get it flattened, and the bad kids would put a rock down in the junction between rails. That was a bit stupid. Of course the Delta just crushed them to powder anyway, even like 300 tons or something. But, yeah, so I grew up with trains really, a bit of a passing interest. So yeah, the old Francis Bourgeois rekindled a bit of interest in trains, and why not? Father-in-law was into steam trains and model steam train making. He made one, unfortunately wasn't able to complete it before he kicked the bucket. So it was finished afterwards by North Wales Model Railway Society in Llandudno. Have a track there. Nice setup. So Nelly, I think it's called. You look out for it if you're in Llandudno, West Shore. Very nice engine. Just come up here for a minute. Yeah, so there we are, a little bit of drifting around Holyhead Port. Not quite as exciting as it used to be, because the super fast ferry used to go from here, the gas turbine engine craft, made of aluminium, huge fuel consumption, of course, which saw the end. It was taken away. It was actually, first of all, it was made in Tasmania and sailed all the way here to Wales, where it was in service for a few years before the price of oil saw an end to it. Had quite a high maintenance demand. If you came off it on the last sailing of the day, around about sort of 11 o'clock midnight time, there'd be a welding company waiting to go on to patch it up, because it used to shake itself to bits. Strangely, it was quite smooth to sail on. And then it was taken away to, I forget now, Scandinavia, I think, to be broken up. But it was very handy, because instead of spending something like 3.5 hours at sea, you only spent an hour and a half getting across to Dublin. So it is a shame, but there we are. Economics is economics, I suppose. Green on, off we go. Fairly assertive there before people nip in behind. There we go. So that was our little trip through the middle of Anglesey, across the north coast, into Holyhead and home. That's today's little short video. I hope you enjoyed it. Had a little bit of interesting land and sea marks there. Thanks for watching. Like and subscribe as always. We'll catch you just as soon as we get onto the next one, which with this weather won't be long.